Like and subscribe while you're here. Right now, we're drinking coffee and talking about Emily Ratajkowski. I'm Emily Jashinsky, culture editor at The Federalist, here with my colleague, not named Emily, Kylee Zempel, assistant editor at The Federalist. We're going to break down Emily Ratajkowski's latest essay in The Cut, which went super viral last week and again into this week. Kylee, what did you think of the essay?
It was really a roller coaster of emotions, honestly. It covered so much ground, and it was, it made most of the feelings that I felt were sad. I really did feel very sorry for her.
Okay.
And it just really pulls at your heartstrings, because if you take out kind of the objectionable elements of this story, and just some of the things that she did kind of get herself into, there really is a real problem here about people who are used for things and then don't have rights to their own work, essentially. Mm-hmm. And so the whole thing was just really sad. So I was sad for that reason. And then I was just sad for her, just the kind of trajectory that her life took and just some of the stuff that she did get into. It was, really heartbreaking.
Yeah, so the title of the essay is Buying Myself Back. When Does a Model Own Her Own Image? Now, Em Rata is kind of like actually a professional activist. She's somebody who does put a lot of effort into politics, into sort of thinking as a feminist. She actually contributed to Lena Dunham's Lenny Letter website, newsletter thing when that was still active. And so she's somebody who's very intentional about her ideology and politics. Although this isn't a super political or overtly fourth wave feminist piece, it's really about her own story. And the basic narrative arc of it is that, there are pretty popular, highly sought after modern artists who are using her Instagram photos in really expensive art that people can buy and hang in their living rooms. And on top of that, there's a compelling narrative that she tells about her experience before she was really enormously famous. And you might remember her from the Robin Thicke Blurred Lines music video. Highly problematic song, by the way, while we're at it. I don't want to rehash that controversy from 2012. That's when I think it was. And then Em Rata got super famous when she was in Gone Girl. And this is before all of that. And it took a turn after all of that. Her agent sent her up to Woodstock on a bus when she was still kind of a struggling model doing stuff for Forever 21 to meet with a prominent photographer who was going to take her pictures, and she gets to his house and the situation is weird. There's a female makeup artist there. He's talking about his ex-wife. It's just like, it seems very charged. Mm-hmm. He's giving her a lot of alcohol. They end up in a bed or on a couch together after they're done shooting, and he penetrates her with his finger. She runs away, wakes up the next morning. He's acting as though nothing ever happened. Eventually, so the pictures come out and she's satisfied with them. Eventually, after she gets super famous, he was shooting Polaroids. After she gets super famous, he takes those Polaroids that he didn't use, which I think were like hundreds. And by the way, he also shoots her nude and puts them together in a book, which he sells and has gallery shows and multiple editions of the book. It's really messy.
It really is. And I think, obviously there's a horrible like sexual assault or whatever component to that. Like, that's a huge problem. But as I was reading that account, I mean, you're right. She tells a super compelling narrative. Like it really draws you in. But one of the things that disturbed me most about that account was just the way that he talked to her. Because that was not like to turn this into just like, women are victims, but as you're reading it, you can see how the way that he spoke to her and was very condescending and, patronizing to her, the way that fueled her trying to prove herself to him, that fueled him, talking down to her again and making really lewd comments about, her body and just very degrading to women generally, which then, in turn fueled again her just desire to come off as intelligent and not just a body, but a mind. And I mean, that's, I think a lot of women have experienced that, although not all to the degree that she did.
Yeah. And by the way, the photographer in question denies Em Rata's account of the story. He says it was different. He when he the New York Times, I think, reviewed either the book or the gallery opening when he was debuting his Polaroids, his collection of Polaroids of Emrata, and she freaks out and emails her agent and says, I never signed a release for these pictures that would allow them to be used beyond their original purpose. And her agent's like, I don't think I did either. Let me check. Goes and checks. Doesn't have anything on file. You didn't sign anything like that, she tells her. So they go to the New York Times and they say, listen, this is not, like, do you have a release, whatever? And the New York Times says he sent over a release, and that leaves Emrata to conclude it must have been forged. So her lawyer then says, you can try to sue, but this is the internet and the pictures are already out there. So if you want a cut of the profits of this, by all means sue. It's going to cost you a ton of money. And honestly, you're not going to be able to put the genie back in the bottle.
Right. Yeah, it's really sad. And it strikes me as I'm reading it that, like, you know, it's definitely he said, she prints this, he denies it, you know, whatever. But if what she's saying is true, I mean, she's really coming from a place of not having any sort of power in this situation, you know, short of a lawsuit, which, you know, like the story says, is like kind of a dumb move because it would just be so costly and you're not really guaranteed to get anything out of it. The pictures are already on the internet. And so, you know, I want to be careful not to deny her agency throughout her life, because obviously there were many, many forks in the road where she could have, you know, made decisions that would have kept her from some of these scenarios, but
kept her away from Robin Thicke.
Kept her away from blurred lines. But, you know, as far as losing her own likeness, her own image, it's like, what else does she have except to print, you know, a story about what she's been through and hope for the best. And I understand she's a celebrity. She has a ton of money. Like, I get that. It's not like she has no options here, but you know, it did garner a lot of sympathy.
Well, and she starts the essay by mentioning something that actually happens to a lot of celebrities, that she Instagrammed a paparazzi picture of herself and got a legal threat because she Instagrammed a picture of herself that wasn't her own property. And, you know, I get that doesn't make a lot of sense on its face, but if you're a public figure and you're in public and somebody else takes an image of you, it's their picture. I mean, it's their property. And so there's some of this stuff that's actually not really, like, I don't know what the solution to that problem is, because someone else took that picture. And if we look at photography as art, then it's art and it's their art. So I don't think there's necessarily a legal solution to this. And it's where technology has created kind of an unsolvable problem in a world where we're looking for a black and white solution to every problem. A blurred line, you could say. But at the end of the day, this is just like such a complicated web of stories and situations, and Emily Ratajkowski, I think, comes out looking pretty good.
She does, and which is crazy based on the content of the story. But I think, you know, it's fair to say that there are times when she gives up her agency when she shouldn't.
Yeah.
And then every time not every time, but when she's not giving up her agency, it's taken from her. And it's just this vicious cycle of making bad decisions and then not doing anything wrong and having something, you know, blow back in your face. And it's a really sad story, also just about human nature. I mean, from her story to also how people are using her, it's quite dark commentary on humanity and like the way that people will use each other and what they will do for profit and for fame and for, you know, being recognized. It's really sad.
Kylee,
I know I keep using that word, but it's just tragic.
You're going soft. No, absolutely. And yeah, that is really the broader point, is that Emily Ratajkowski is one of these people who's absolutely dominated Instagram influencer culture, and influencer culture more broadly came on the scene in a big way around 2012, then got really famous after Gone Girl, and is famous, you know, she maintains her public image by relying heavily on Instagram. And there are a lot of young girls in Gen Z and some younger millennials like yourself. I guess I'm technically a younger millennial too, but learned recently that I am Kylie's senior by more years than I'm comfortable admitting, given her level of maturity. But, you know, there are a lot of young girls out there who do look at Instagram and the Instagram influencers and people like Emrata and are putting images on the internet that will be out there forever, that they're really going to regret having out there.
Right. And it's, it's stories like this that do garner a lot of sympathy for her that, maybe aren't great for that aspect of things. But, at the end of the day, it's just like these people looking up to her, like, make better choices. Don't do what she did,
Protect your image,
yeah.
right? Like, protect your image, because the internet is a place where you can't erase things permanently. So you might not be famous now, and you might feel comfortable posting a picture that you wouldn't otherwise, but you know what? College recruiters in a few years might stumble upon that, or
True.
people in your sorority when you're in college, or people in your workplace that you're fighting with, or that have something, a grudge against you, or some reason to hurt you, that can scour through your internet history and use them against you. And so you can't really predict how these things can turn out, especially when you're young and have a developing brain, and this, the rush that you get from likes and everything now is so attractive. But this is another story where, she gave a bunch of pictures that she took while highly intoxicated, Polaroid copies, to this photographer, and he had them.
Right. Well, and I mean, if there's anything we've learned from cancel culture, it's that no one is too small to have something that they've done in their past, something that they've posted on the internet, be drudged up and used against them. And, that's not what this piece is about.
That's a good point.
But I think it applies.
Yeah, and you know what? Also a great lesson for young women is don't drink in these situations. She's alone, with the exception of a makeup artist, at a strange man's house in the Catskills, with no car and no ability to leave. She's totally dependent on him, or like the bus system. So, I mean, in this situation, seriously, don't drink. You don't know this man. You're alone in a house with him. Presumably the makeup artist is going to bed. You don't know her either.
Right. Which, that's one of the most prime examples of her giving up her agency. It's like you started with so little there. Like, you're at the mercy of this man in his home, without a way to really get out. And then any remaining, agency that she had, she gave up with all of the wine that she drank.
And that doesn't, of course, excuse anything.
Correct.
That's, of course, she, no matter how much you drink, you don't deserve mistreatment from a man.
Absolutely not.
And although Kylee is just hateful, and she's just full of animosity for women.
Can you hear it in my voice?
Yeah, she's just a truly evil person. But anyway, it's one of those situations where I would just encourage young women to be very careful with their alcohol intake, because it seemed like he was deliberately getting her drunk, if Emrata's account is accurate. And that's how, you can end up in these situations where your ability to make sharp decisions is dulled, and that's never a good position to be in when you don't have a car or a way out of a house. But the broader lesson of the story is that you just need to be so careful with, take ownership of yourself and your body. I'm sure Emily Ratajkowski would do things differently if she could go back. But images that are taken can end up on the internet, and once they're on the internet, there's no way to put the genie back in the bottle. Whether or not you put them there, if they're out there, if they're on the cloud, if they're physical copies that somebody else has, you just need to really guard your image carefully.
Right. Well, and she can't go back and change it now, and I'm sure there's things that she gained through that experience that she's going to carry with her and do differently in the future. But there's this principle in criminal justice called target hardening, which she really should have done, and it's a big lesson that we can take from this, Emily.
Just hitting me
always
with academic theory.
Always assume that someone is out to get you and make it harder for them.
Oh, I mean, I definitely assume that at any given moment.
I'm usually out to get you,
assume it's
so.
you. Yeah. All right, everyone. You can read that essay on The Cut. Please like and subscribe. We will be back soon with more.
Another long one.
I know, but I can't stop.
I know.